Hey everybody, this is Kohdok here. Well, after my Yokai Watch trading card game review, a lot of people had talked about how the Yokai Watch Model 0 had been released in the United States. I went and looked at my local Toys R Us and wouldn't you know it, there it was. So today we're going to be talking about the Hasbro Model 0. The Model 0 is the Hasbro English version of the Japanese Zero Shiki. It is the second form of the Yokai Watch, and it is able to use a bunch of new medals, mostly those introduced in the upcoming game Yokai Watch 2. Now, in order to differentiate itself from the original Yokai Watch, Hasbro added something called Yo Motion, which is a gimmick involving these three little holes on the new medals, which contain various cells of animation, which, when put into the watch, can be projected out of a hole here that projects an animation onto whatever surface you're aiming it at. Now that's actually kind of cool. I may have a bit of a bad history with microglyphs concerning how they were used in Kohdok, but in Yokai Watch they actually make perfect sense. You're finally finding the yokai with the watch flashlight, which is kind of one of the central gimmicks of the show. And that's actually kind of fun. It makes perfect sense, and it works fairly well. It reflects fairly brightly on most surfaces, and by most surfaces I mean if you tape a piece of aluminum foil to your wall. But it's still fun. It makes the watch a bit more engaging than the Japanese one, although, to my understanding, this gimmick was intended from the start. I heard about this version of the Model 0 back in like a year ago when they released the first Yokai Watch game, and they were showing off the prototypes of the original Yokai Watch long before its release. So it would certainly explain why the model tracks are left justified to leave room for the gimmick if that was kind of their plan all along. So a few of the design choices now make a bit more sense, but here's the thing, microglyphs and stuff like this tend to be really consuming on resources and design. See Kohdok as a previous example, so Hasbro has had to make several sacrifices in order to make this gimmick come to life. So we're gonna have to see if those sacrifices are worth it. One of the sacrifices Hasbro had to make was price point. The Model 0 costs $30, unlike the $20 of the original. So at $30, it is now roughly the range of the Japanese watch, which averages around $32 these days. You can easily find it as low as like $30, $32. And here's the thing, the Bandai watch, it is just so much higher quality than the Hasbro one, even with the gimmick. It doesn't have this kind of weird bulbous shape. I mean, the bulb on the Hasbro one, it just looks really weird and cheap, and it's not even used as a bulb, it's kind of a dummy bulb, whereas the Japanese one actually has like a bright violet LED, which makes it a very strong light when it comes out. And also the Japanese Bandai version has this sort of pearlescent coating on it. It's got sort of a glossy finish, whereas the Hasbro one is just the basic colors without any kind of fun finish at all, and it just makes this Bandai version of the watch look so much classier, so much more fancy. It's got a more metallic gold on the band. You can actually fold away the lever that operates the flashlight, unlike the Hasbro one, which kind of stays out. It's got the hinges, and the ring in the center is also a lot looser and more responsive. It'll still make the sounds, but you can, the way it rotates around, it's very, very loose. With the Hasbro one, it's actually kind of tight, and in order to actually get it into the last position, in order to actually activate the gimmick, you have to really kind of crank it. And that's not the only difference with the Bandai watch. If I, depending on where I wind it, if I wind it to 1, it'll switch over to the jingle like before, and if I switch it over to 2, it will go straight to the summoning with Jibanyan. And we'll get the Jibanyan Yoi cry, whereas with the Hasbro one, it doesn't necessarily match the show. Now, normally you'd think that in order to activate the jingle, I turn it to 1, right? Well, if I turn it to 2... it'll play the jingle. If I turn it to 2 again... yeah, so with this watch, for some reason it doesn't matter which way you turn it to activate the different effects, whereas with the Japanese watch, not only does it affect which way I turn it, but I can actually toggle it and activate it several times. The Japanese watch matches the show properly. The Hasbro watch doesn't care quite as much. And if there's something else you noticed about the Jibanyan I put into this watch, it made the quote from the original watch. One of the huge selling points of the Type 0 is that it is supposed to give you new quotes for these characters to say, particularly with Jibanyan, who has 3 different medals. But in that case, that selling point seems to have been lost on Hasbro. So a fun difference is when you try to use the regular medals on it. So I have both the Japanese and the English versions of Blizzaria here. So let's see what happens when I put the Japanese version into the Type 0. So in this case, it'll tell me that the medal is incompatible. So what'll happen when I use the American Blizzaria in the American watch? Okay, it went in like normal. It plays the jingle, and her name is... Okay, so here's the thing about Hasbro's Model 0, is it's not compatible with the original medals, at least not as well as the actual watch, but it doesn't say so. It'll instead play the jingle and say it's summoning Charming, but it won't actually say the name of the yokai. Here's the thing, with the Japanese watch, it'll flat out tell you that it's not compatible. This thing's a bit more like a lying politician. Hey, listen, I never said it was compatible. Another victim of this weird color trend was the medals. Rather than the Japanese medals, which are kind of this cool, transparent, glittery crystal color, the English ones are this really ugly toothpaste green. I mean, I imagine they had to be opaque in order to support the microglyph gimmick, but couldn't they have at least been pearlescent like the first set of American Yokai Watch medals were? And that too, considering the fact that they had to add this huge chunk to the metal here, means that the actual pictures that they used, I can use Matenshi as a better example here, shows how the images had to be kind of squashed down and moved in, meaning that now there is a lot of negative space on the images of these medals. It's really kind of distracting. So in conclusion, it's down to whether you want a fun toy or a high-quality collectible, seeing as the price tag is no longer an issue. I will admit that the reason it probably does the full jingle for the regular yokai medals, the silver ones, is probably so that if this is the only watch you have, it at least does something, but that's kind of complicated by the fact that they don't write the actual names of the characters on the medals, and this thing sure isn't going to tell you what they are. If you haven't gotten any of these before, definitely try the original Yokai Watch first. Target has this thing for 15 bucks. That's half the price of the Model 0. Otherwise, it's really up to you. If you're one of those people who was really going to get the English version of the Yokai Watch no matter what, don't let me stop you. If you want to have the English medals, if you enjoy the gimmick, which I admit is actually really engaging, then by all means go for the American one. Otherwise, if you want something that's like nicer looking, if you're an older collector more into collecting the medals, the Bandai watch, like I said, is almost the same price. It's maybe like a few dollars more, and you know what? So is the U. The Yokai Watch U is on average about $34 after shipping on Amazon. I think some are down at $28 that can enjoy prime shipping if you add a little bit more to your cart. But the thing about these is that they can use everything except for the newer Dream medals, which I admit I haven't really been able to get around to yet because the Yokai Watch Dream I have not seen for less than $60, but it has the extra fun lights and sounds. It can be upgraded. You can remove the face and change it around a little bit. It's a really fun watch, and it's really going to be interesting to see what Hasbro is going to do with their version of the Yokai Watch U, assuming we get one, because this one, it's got lots of fancy lights. There are special medals you can put into it that make it play songs. It has so many features, so many more than even this thing, and Bandai was still able to keep it to around $35 as far as I can remember. So that's going to be interesting to see. But in the meantime, you know, the Japanese version of the Yokai Watch U, not only can you upgrade it with pretty much any regular SD card, but you can buy medals for this thing by the bushel from places like Rakuten, although be careful. Sometimes they try to get you on shipping, but a place I've gone to called Full Ahead tends to be willing to use the SAL small packet, which is fairly cheap. So, that's a look at the Yokai Watch Model 0 from Hasbro, and until next time, this is Kohdok signing off.
最後はクールダウン息を吸って吐いて息を吸って吐いて
And her name is...
John Cena!